Today I'd like to talk to you about the Bill of Rights, specifically the Second Amendment, which most people misunderstand. I'll start by asking you, how many rights are granted by the Bill of Rights? I'll give you a second to think about it. You can pause the video. The correct answer is 0. The Bill of Rights doesn't grant any rights. It merely enumerates certain natural rights that you innately possess. There are two commonly accepted views on the Second Amendment. The first is the progressive viewpoint, which is that the purpose of the Second Amendment is for something like the National Guard. The conservative viewpoint is that the purpose of the Second Amendment is to allow the armed citizenry to overthrow the government. Both of these are wrong. The Second Amendment reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." This isn't about militia under the government's control. The term well-regulated needs to be taken in historical context. At the time, the word regulated was primarily used to mean that something was functional, timely, and reliable. It's also not about the right to take up arms against the government. The people who wrote it had not long before done exactly that. Of course they viewed it as legitimate. There was some debate over how long it would be until the next armed revolution was necessary, but they all expected it within a few decades. To get a better understanding of what the Second Amendment is about, we should take a look at the Bill of Rights at a macro level. The First Amendment prohibits the government from infringing on freedom of the press or free association. The Third Amendment prohibits the government from forcing you to house agents of the state. The Fourth Amendment prohibits arbitrary invasions of privacy and seizure of property. The Fifth Amendment prohibits criminal trials outside the bounds of the law, and it prohibits forcing people to testify against themselves, as well as prohibiting military tribunals outside the context of war. The Sixth Amendment prohibits trials where the accused does not know the nature of the accusation or who accused him, preventing him from defending himself. The Seventh Amendment prohibits judges from arbitrarily deciding or overturning civil judgments. The Eighth Amendment prohibits punishments outside the bounds of the law. The Ninth Amendment makes it clear that the Bill of Rights is not there to grant rights, but that they exist regardless of law. The Tenth Amendment clarifies that the general purpose of the Constitution is first to restrict the government, secondarily to restrict the states, but never to restrict the people. So, if we step back and look at all of these, and we take it into historical context, we can see that the Bill of Rights stands as a warning against the specific abuses of power that Americans had suffered at the hands of the Crown. The entire Bill of Rights is a list of lines that, when crossed, indicate that you are living under a police state. The enforcers of this police state were the Redcoats, the British Army. The Second Amendment is the same as the rest. The true purpose of the Second Amendment is to prohibit the United States government from maintaining a standing army. After the Revolutionary War, the Continental Army was disbanded because the Founding Fathers feared that whoever gained power could use the military to enforce their will. They did not believe that a country with a standing army occupying it could be free. It is also obvious that a country that cannot defend itself cannot remain free. Thus, they concluded that a functional and efficient militia comprised of private citizens with privately owned military weapons was the only way a country could be both free and secure. They came to see a standing navy as necessary, and I'm sure they would see a standing air force as necessary. But I do not believe the Founding Fathers would support the Army and Marine Corps as they exist today. Perhaps as skeleton structures designed to facilitate rapid training and scaling necessary for modern warfare, but they certainly would find the Army, the Marine Corps, and even the police with their SWAT teams and such absolutely horrific and intolerable. We've already crossed every single line in the Bill of Rights. They're all being violated on a regular basis. We do in fact live under a police state, although clearly the level of oppression is nothing compared to the various socialist regimes of the 20th century. The point is that we need to recognize these violations of our rights and counteract them, rather than allowing injustice to grow and eventually reach a point where it becomes very difficult to solve these problems without extensive bloodshed. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We should not let the horrors of police states past be repeated. We should look to the example of the Founding Fathers and insist on standing up for liberty long before oppression becomes universal. Understanding the true context and meaning of the Bill of Rights is the first step to this.